Why are there people who, although they have the opportunity to go out, spend time with others, and fill their days with company, still prefer to stay at home? This question sounds simple, but in fact it is a deep mystery of the human psyche. Society often labels such a decision as shyness, laziness, or even a sign of isolation. Yet behind it lies something else, something that Carl Jung understood with remarkable clarity. Loneliness is not always a rejection of the world, but a call of the soul for an inner journey. And imagine that every time you close the door to your room and decide not to go out, you are answering a quiet voice within you. This voice does not seek distraction through noise or crowds. It wants to lead you into the depths of your own being. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." It is precisely this awakening that begins when you choose to stay at home. Perhaps you have already noticed that the bustle of the streets, superficial conversations or social gatherings drain you rather than give you energy. But when you are alone in your room, you feel relief, calm, something the outside world cannot give you. This feeling of peace is not a coincidence but a message from your psyche, a sign that your soul needs silence to hear itself. What many dismiss as staying at home is in truth a sign of introspection. It is the quiet search for authenticity, a path to self-understanding that not everyone wants to take. For even though going out and having fun may seem more attractive on the surface, the true confrontation takes place in the silence of your own home, the encounter with yourself. And here arises the question Jung invites us to explore. Does this preference for solitude really mean a withdrawal from the world, or is it a sign that we are coming closer to our essence? Staying at home does not mean, as many think, rejecting the outside world. It means rather returning to yourself. Every time you choose silence over noise, you are in truth opening an invisible door to your inner self. This seemingly simple step has a profound psychological meaning. It means that you dare to walk a path most avoid, because looking inward requires courage. Jung was convinced within every human being exists a vast, mysterious universe. And this universe, full of symbols, images, and memories, can only be explored in solitude when one decides not to go out. It is not about rejection, but about opening to the questions the outside world can never answer. Who am I really? What am I searching for? What is the meaning of my life? The journey inward is uncomfortable. At first, the silence can even be frightening because it confronts us with things we would rather suppress. Repressed thoughts, fears we hide in daily life, feelings we never express. But it is precisely there that the awakening of consciousness begins. Many people want to avoid this confrontation. They surround themselves with noise, distractions, activities that fill time but leave the soul empty. But those who hear the call of introspection understand something essential. To truly know yourself is only possible if you first pass through your inner darkness. Thus, solitude becomes a mirror that shows not only who we are, but also who we could become. Imagine your inner self as a house with locked rooms. Most of the time we live only in one bright room with a view outside. But when you choose solitude, you take the key and begin opening doors you have never entered. In some rooms you find forgotten memories, in others intense feelings, in yet others dreams you had abandoned. This is not an escape from life, but a search for wholeness, for only those who walk through their own inner corridors can grasp the entirety of their being. Jung summed it up in one sentence. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And it is in this awakening that the true value of solitude reveals itself, not as emptiness, but as presence. The presence of your soul that finally wants to be heard. There are moments in life when one discovers in solitude a truth that can hardly be put into words. Silence can be more healing than the loudest party, and the calm of your own room can give you more strength than an entire crowd. Staying at home does not mean emptiness, but quiet fullness. The feeling of peace you sense when you are alone is in reality a deep message from your psyche. It is an invitation to pause the outside world for a moment and listen to what is happening within you. Think about it. Haven't you already noticed how exhausted you feel after a day full of people, even if it was full of laughter and conversation? Something in you is tired, drained, as if your energy had been sucked out. But when you spend time alone, in your familiar retreat, you feel your life force slowly returning. This is no coincidence. Your soul knows it needs silence, just as your body needs sleep to regain strength. Carl Jung observed that the human soul always seeks balance. Crowds, social obligations, and constant noise sometimes have their place. But if we remain in that environment too long, we lose contact with what is essential. Solitude acts as a counterbalance, as the other side of the scale, restoring harmony to our lives. In this pause, away from foreign voices, you have the chance to hear yourself clearly. The outside world constantly demands that you be someone for others, fulfill expectations, play roles, respond to demands. But solitude leads you back to your true face, to your essence without masks. That is the peace you feel when you are at home, the liberation from having to perform or prove anything, simply to be. Jung said that the unconscious expresses itself in symbols and subtle feelings, and these signals can only be perceived when the outside world grows quiet. In other words, outer silence opens the door to the inner language. That is why what many experience as boredom when they are alone is in truth often the beginning of a deep dialogue with their own soul. Solitude is not passivity, but an active process, a return to what truly matters. If you feel that relief the moment you close the door behind you, you are not rejecting others but affirming your right to exist in peace. This moment of silence is an act of healing. And here something exciting happens. The more you allow yourself to experience this inner peace, the stronger your ability becomes to deal with the outside world. For solitude does not make you weak, it makes you strong. The calm that arises from silence is the source from which you can later connect with others without losing yourself in them. So far we have spoken about the emotional and spiritual dimension, but what is fascinating is that biology also provides an explanation. Your brain, this infinite network of connections, holds a secret. Every time you grow still and focus on yourself, certain areas switch on and function differently. Neuroscientists have discovered that the so-called medial prefrontal cortex plays a key role in this. This area lights up when you think about yourself, reflect on your feelings, or even when you try to understand the inner world of others. In other words, self-awareness and empathy spring from the same source. This means something profound. When you choose to stay at home and listen to yourself, you not only learn to know yourself better, but paradoxically also become more capable of connecting with others. Solitude is not selfishness, but a quiet training to better understand life. Carl Jung sensed this truth long before science could confirm it. He spoke of the importance of introspection, of looking into one's own soul to discover who we are. Today, neurobiology shows that this inner journey activates brain networks that help us grow in self-understanding and empathy. Imagine your mind as a calm lake. When you are surrounded by noise and people, the surface of the water is disturbed and you see nothing beneath. But when you choose silence, the water clears and you can look into the depths. There lie your memories, your feelings, your hidden desires. Science calls this neural activity, but you experience it as inner clarity. The most fascinating thing is that this practice of being alone and reflecting strengthens your emotional resilience. Your brain trains in this invisible gym of solitude to better cope with stress, recognize patterns in your emotions, and find meaning in your life. Therefore, when someone criticizes you for preferring to stay at home, they do not realize that your brain is at that very moment working for you. You are not losing time. In reality, you are building new neural connections that help you understand yourself better, and thereby also perceive others more clearly. Loneliness thus becomes a tool of self-knowledge, as powerful as any experience outside in the world. Here, science and psychology meet. What looks like a simple decision, staying at home, being silent, reflecting, is in truth a deep, transformative process. Your psyche experiences it as introspection. Your brain translates it into new connections that shape your way of being. In Jungian psychology, loneliness is neither coincidence nor merely a personal preference. It is the expression of a universal archetype, the hermit. He appears in myths, religions, and traditions of all cultures. The hermit is not a weak figure nor a coward fleeing from life. On the contrary, he is a wise man who knows that external life is full of distractions and that one must at times withdraw from the noise of the world to find a deeper truth. In the tarot, for example, the hermit holds a lamp in the darkness. This light is not first for others but illuminates his own inner path. Jung saw in this an image of the human psyche seeking self-knowledge. The hermit stands for maturity of spirit, for the ability to recognize that silence is not nothingness but a fertile space in which important insights arise. So, if you unconsciously decide to stay at home, you embody this archetype. You step back to listen, you observe without distraction, you give space to your inner voice. Think of the great sages of history: Moses on the mountain, Buddha under the fig tree, Christ in the desert. All experienced phases of solitude before sharing their teachings with the world. The image of the hermit does not call for shutting oneself off forever, but only for withdrawing enough to hear the inner truth in order to later share it with others. Our modern society, fixated on productivity and constant networking, often views solitude with suspicion. But Jung reminds us, the hermit does not represent weakness, but inner strength. His lamp symbolizes the clarity that arises when one dares to enter one's own darkness. And the fascinating thing, this archetype does not belong only to mystics or sages. It resides in each of us. When you consciously choose solitude, you follow an ancient pattern that has accompanied humanity for millennia. It reminds us that inner life is just as real as outer life. But, and here lies the crucial point, not every solitude is the same. Jung knew there is a great difference between solitude out of fear and solitude out of awareness. The first imprisons, the second liberates. Whoever withdraws out of fear, from judgment, from conflict, or because life outside seems unbearable, does not experience introspection but escape. This kind of solitude becomes a prison that constricts the spirit and drains vitality. It is completely different when you choose solitude consciously. Then it is an act of autonomy, a clear signal. I need to hear myself. I need space to understand who I am and what I feel. It is not a no to the world, but a bridge between inside and outside, like closing your eyes to see more clearly, like silence to finally hear. Jung emphasized that the most difficult task of human beings is to face their own shadow side, the parts of us we would rather repress. And this encounter succeeds only in silence. That is why the conscious choice of solitude is a courageous step. You face your reflection without masks. It is not escape, but confrontation. Not imprisonment, but liberation. One can imagine it like this. Someone who flees out of fear lives like a prisoner in a locked cell. Someone who consciously chooses solitude lives in a bright, open room that he could leave at any time but stays because he knows a treasure awaits inside. Society rarely makes this distinction. It often calls the person who prefers to be alone strange, antisocial, or not adjusted. But in reality, everything depends on inner motivation. The same act, staying at home, being silent, declining an invitation, can be either a sign of weakness or of strength. What matters is whether it comes from fear or from awareness. Here Jung's teaching becomes decisive. He invites us to ask ourselves honestly, do I flee from the world because I cannot endure it? Or do I consciously choose this moment of solitude to find myself? The answer to this question shows not only what kind of solitude we are experiencing, it also changes the way we move through life. For when solitude is consciously chosen, it ceases to be a wall and becomes a bridge into the depth of your being, but also to more genuine relationships with others. Many people think that solitude is a barrier that cuts us off from life. But from Jung's perspective, conscious solitude is not a wall but a bridge that connects the outer world with the inner universe. Their authenticity begins to grow and life gains more depth. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you no longer need to fill every minute with foreign voices or activities. You realize that solitude is not a hole that must be filled, but a fertile ground in which the truest part of you germinates. In the silence of your home, without distraction, you hear the inner voice that has always been there, but often drowned in the noise of everyday life. It is your guide to authenticity, to what Jung called the process of individuation, the path on which every human being becomes what he truly is. Thus, solitude becomes a bridge to your essence. Every minute in silence invites you to observe your thoughts, to accept your feelings, and to reconcile with repressed parts of yourself. And then something special happens. The more you connect with yourself, the more capable you become of truly connecting with others. That is the great secret. Solitude does not separate you from the world, it prepares you for it. Whoever has never learned to listen to himself cannot truly listen to others. Whoever has never learned to find peace in his own presence can hardly give it in a relationship. Conscious solitude thus becomes training for empathy, love, and genuine connection. Jung knew the soul does not grow in noise, but in moments of concentration when we look inward. There our inner life arranges itself, their experiences find their meaning, their wounds begin to heal. Solitude is therefore the bridge that leads us from chaos to order, from confusion to clarity, from the social mask to authenticity. Imagine walking across a suspension bridge that hovers over a river. On one side lies the outer world, expectations, demands, relationships. On the other side, your inner realm, dreams, fears, memories, your true essence. Solitude is the bridge that carries you between these worlds without losing yourself in either. That is why staying at home does not mean turning away from others, but strengthening yourself so that you can later meet the world more clearly, more powerfully, and more authentically. Staying at home is not a sign of laziness or weakness, but a quiet act of awareness, a return to your essence. Solitude is a path, a bridge, and even an ancient symbol in human history. Jung knew, in silence lies the truth that the noise of the world will never reveal. So if someone tells you that you are antisocial because you prefer your own realm, remember, you are following a deeper call, a call of your soul. You are not fleeing from life, you are entering it in the most authentic way. For only one who looks inward can truly awaken. Conscious solitude is not absence but presence, the most important of all, your own. When you learn to be at peace with yourself, when you realize that you can endure and appreciate your own company, you are ready to step into the world with new strength. The message is clear. Your home, your silence, your solitude are not prisons, they are temples. Temples in which your psyche expands, your soul strengthens, and your deepest truth comes to light. Therefore, embrace your moments of solitude as sacred opportunities. Listen to your inner voice and transform every moment of silence into an act of transformation.